Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. It's Monday. Grumpy is in the house, grumpier than ever. And Mateusz is here, also grumpy, looks like. What's going on, man?
Grumpy, I don't have the right mug for it, but I just want to let you know, Timucin, for all the work that you do here at American Scouser.
What does that say?
Oh, it says you're my hero. Oh
Oh, thanks,
no.
man. Thanks,
Oh
man.
man.
Yeah,
You can't read it, so I guess it doesn't matter.
yeah. We'll have to take your word for that. But yes, I appreciate being your hero. I don't know where it gets me, but I'll take what I can at this point. People are gathering. Gather around, children. Let's talk
Let's
about
let's
the
let's
pessimistic.
listen to our heroes and watch them let us down again.
Okay, so let's start with our saga. Well, actually, you missed the post match yesterday. I know we were talking about it on the pre match show, but well, Alex says keep doing work. So there, he's like, stop being a hero, keep freaking working. Thank you, sir. Good morning. Okay, so the game, in a nutshell, how are you walking away from that?
Fine. I feel like, going into it, we had said that a draw would be fine, given where we're at in the season, given the lineup, given the structure of the team. The most disheartening thing, and this is something that we keep harping on, is this was the best time to get more points against Chelsea. Now, Enzo was absolutely fantastic. And when you think about Enzo coupling with Caicedo, and what that could potentially bring as a partnership for the next 7 years, it looks really promising there. And they played 10 times better than anything that I saw last year from them. And I think I I mean, I'm not going to like sit here and go, "Oh, Chelsea, you're back," but they're only going to get better. And I really think that we lucked out in even getting a point. So I think we should walk away being pretty happy getting a point, because there was a good 60% of that match where we didn't even deserve to be on the same field, honestly.
Because it says happy Monday, I hate everything. I think we're all in the same boat already. Because here's the thing with the game, and I do agree. I mean, we talked about it before. I do have Chelsea going up. I actually have Chelsea finishing fourth this season because I think Pochettino turns things around. Um, my biggest thing was I really felt if we had a CDM, we easily win that game. And this is what I've been harping on for the last 3-4 weeks now. Is this is what I'm afraid of in 3 to 4 weeks when we only have 7 out of 12 points or something like that, or 8 out of 12 points or something like that. We're going to be like, man, we have 12 if we had a CDM all along, because there's a lot of good signs, but not having that, and then everybody playing out of position. Because if you look at it at the end of the day, it looks like, yeah, we're just missing one guy. The rest of the midfield is there. But then that pushes McAllister to play out of position, and you have like Gakpo there. I don't know. Like, it felt like if we had somebody there, I honestly don't care who. If we had like the half-ass Fab yesterday, I think it makes a big difference because it gets McAllister to a different spot and stuff. And that's probably the most disappointing and
And it gets
frustrating thing. Well, I know about most because there's a lot more going on, but
I think most importantly, it would have got Jota off the pitch. But hey, I am,
yes.
I will. I think people by now know I'm not the biggest Jota fan, and I think I kind of beat the dead horse on that one. But I think he was just dreadful yesterday. I think it was, I having a CDM would have pushed Jota out, because you would have had McAllister on the left side and Gakpo up front, and I think that would have
Yes.
been miles better than what was going on yesterday.
Yeah, like I was watching the post match, and Klopp made it sound like, he was very happy with that, but I'm not buying that. Like that Gakpo in that spot, he's played that before. He plays it well. He knows it and stuff like that. I just feel like he kind of gets wasted there a little bit, for one. I mean, in terms of pressing, yes, that was the lineup. Probably you get that a lot from Jota in terms of like the press and the work rate and everything like that. But yeah, I think a proper CDM with proper midfielders next to him would have been a game changer yesterday. I really believe that we would have won that game yesterday. It was under our control in the beginning, and then it kind of like took an odd turn. I mean, I really loved what I saw out of McAllister. Soboslai here and there. I saw somewhere made Soboslai their man of the match, and I was like, well, must be watching a different match, or you must be watching to make Szoboszlai man of the match, kind of an ordeal. But yeah, I mean, we take the point. We talked about it before that the point is not the worst thing to take. I'm sure we'll dissect the hell out of it with the boys tonight. Victor, who hates Mondays and everything else, and Galley. But so let's go back to the scenario that's, so Caicedo is going to Chelsea. So somebody grab a calculator and explain to me how Lavia can go there when they could barely afford, and the rumor was they could not afford Caicedo in the first place. So explain me math 101. Do it.
From I should change my little title from the Polish Prince to the mathing whiz or something of that nature, because obviously I am the math guy here, and I don't know. Short answer. I think maybe in some weird context, like they can only spend X amount on one player. They can only spread so much over 8 years on one player. So 110 is tough to do, but 65 you could easily spread over 8 years. So maybe they have room for all of them.
And the walls collapse. The walls collapse. Oh, wow. This is why I love Monday mornings. Chelsea apparently has 65 million bill because of their sales and spreading contracts over the 8 to 9 years. But they also need a goalie and stuff. That's the thing I don't get. Like, these guys have other needs still. I don't know how the hell it doesn't happen, but they can't spread over 8 years anymore. From what I understand, the 5 years, they can do 8 years, but a certain percentage, or the main thing has to be 5 years, but they can kind of like still spread it out. And I think like basically show the wages probably. I don't know how this is going to pan out 4 or 5 years from now. Their connection to Saudi Arabia is, I think, the kind of like the bailout way, where they're going to say, what we're thinking right now, right? This is like, when you look at this, what I've been saying all along is this can really kind of bite you in the ass. There's a lot of examples here in baseball where people are paying people who retired like 3 years ago and shit. So the guy's just collecting a check. He's not even like practicing. He's just like chilling. But yeah, Victor says, yeah, the transfer fees, they can do, I think it's 5 years for transfer fees. Yes, 5 years. But then the wage structure, they can be like, we'll pay you another 3 years after that. So but then the Saudi thing kind of is like a bailout button, because they can say at that point, hey, we sold this guy to the Saudis for like 30 or something like that. And the wall is back. Yay!
I broke the fourth wall.
What the funny thing is? This happens every week almost on the Monday night podcast. I don't know. Bickler has his wall on a timer or something. 30 seconds after the show ends, you just see the thing collapse in the background suddenly. Yours just did it mid-show. So I'll connect you with Bickler to give you how to schedule that to come down once the show ends.
For a more appropriate time.
I think it was if they don't dramatically increase revenue or make CL, they're in big trouble. Yes, they are. I mean, that's the thing, right? If they can make the top 4, which I think they will, that is a huge. But here's the problem. I mean, when you have these connections, this is my problem with and we're gonna talk about some of like the rules in the Premier League and stuff later on. But I am so annoyed that I'd rather have no rules than rules that are not being enforced. Am I the only one at this? I mean, that's what aggravates me. Like, then just say, you know what, spend what you got, man. Like, smoke them if you got them, kind of thing. And let's just move on. This pretending to have rules with 85 loopholes, like Swiss cheese, with holes in the system. What's the point?
Exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it sets a bad precedent if you have, and this goes for any sort of situation in life, if you have a set of rules that always get curved or always get just you do just enough where it is breaking the rule, but just enough where there's that little gray area where they go, but if you don't really think about it in that way, you can still get by it. So if you open up that can of worms, it's not worth it to have any rules in the first place. So yeah, I agree. It should be all or nothing kind of deal. Either really start strictly imposing something, and not just a couple $1 million fines, but actually something that does stop teams from doing this. You point deductions. That seem to be the only thing that really. I mean, I don't know. You can ask Juventus; it doesn't stop them from doing anything. but you need to do something that'll actually affect the club to a point where they'll stop and go, okay, this is what needs to happen, because otherwise it's just going to continue to happen.
It's aggravating seeing that there are all these ways, and it takes 2 years, 3 years before they're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's close that loophole. But by then, there's another 10 that was found. So you guys have been trying to fix this one, but it's like leaking all over the place. So this is like an interesting thing over here. So I want to get your take on this, because I know especially Bickler, and I've seen online too, in Brighton looking bad on this ordeal. Does Brighton really look bad on this ordeal? In terms of, like, they gave a timeline. See, like, the problem is we don't really know the Caicedo party of things, right? Like, did he really want to go to Chelsea ultimately? I almost feel like, yes, we would not have put in a bid if he said, like, if he didn't say he was interested. But maybe it wasn't him. It was his agent trying to get more out of Chelsea, saying, oh, yeah, he'll come to Liverpool. Why wouldn't he? Even though Caicedo did not want to. And then why would Brighton sell a guy and force him to go there? It doesn't look good on the rest of their players they recruit when they pull a move like that.
Is it crazy to think that there is a chance that we put in a bid for someone that didn't want to come here? Like, why do we feel like there had to be 100% acceptance on Caicedo's part to come here? I feel like with how well we've conducted business over the last 7-8 years, kind of how swiftly all the deals are done, there can be moments where something like this happens where you just kind of throw in a bid just to throw the bid in there because you really want the guy, not getting 100% certainty if they really do want to come. Because I think he wanted to stay in London regardless, whether it was Arsenal, whether it was Chelsea. We saw it in January. We saw it earlier. It's just he wanted to stay in London. He wanted to play for a big club in London, and that's fine. But I don't think like we're trying to make all these excuses of justifying our actions, and sometimes we just get it wrong. Like we can't be right all the time. Maybe this is one of those times where we're wrong, where we put in the bid, thought that if we had the highest bid, he would want to come because it's Liverpool. Why not play with McAllister again? And so we did it, and Brighton accepted it. And then maybe Caicedo really just didn't want to come to Liverpool. And we keep trying to tell ourselves that, oh yeah, he had to have come. He had to want to come. There's no reason why he had to want to come. I don't know. I just feel like there's something.
Somebody gave a green light though, even if it's his agent. I mean, it doesn't have to be him. And said, yeah, he'll come. Why wouldn't he?
There probably was a slight feeling, and it could have easily been the agent, because the agent's always going to kind of say the best. First is probably his own wallet, then it's his player's wallet, right? So he's looking at it going, okay, if they can get this deal over the line and they offer 110 for him tonight, great, we'll do it. But then if he hears rumblings after the deadline and then hears that Chelsea will up the bid and Caicedo really actually wanted to play at Chelsea, then he's willing to stop and then try and fight for him to get to Chelsea instead. I think the only thing that makes Brighton look a little bad is that they set the deadline in the first place. That's one of those things that we just talked about. If you're going to set a rule, if you're going to set a deadline, you're going to set something, then what's the point of not standing by it? Other than to...
But if they stood by it and said, no, you're going to Liverpool or you're not going, how does that look to their future, like their players that are in that squad right now or people they're getting? Why wouldn't, they're going to be like, oh, so you guys are not going to let me go where I want to go because you said like this deadline that you pulled out of thin air? And, as a player, if I'm like, I don't know, what's the kid's name? Their other midfielder.
Oh, Lavia?
No, the other one that Brighton has that they keep freaking buying. So like finding these guys out of nowhere. But if you're a player over there, knowing in a year or two you're going to be in a similar situation, why would you like that? Or why would you go to Brighton if they're going to eventually say, well, the deadline was then, they didn't bid, so I guess you're going to Liverpool.
Well, I mean, you could also say, do you think that
Yes, that's
maybe
the guy.
and
Yeah.
Ciso? Okay.
Yeah.
You could also say that perhaps don't you think that maybe Brighton would have spoken to Caicedo and his agent as well and have said, hey, look, we're setting a deadline tonight. Like whoever bids the most, that's where you're going to. And I'm sure they would also be aware of it. I don't think Brighton would have set the deadline had the player and agent not been sort of on board with it as well. I don't know. I
feel
like
this is the agent. I mean, I don't know. Maybe
it's-
we're giving too much credit to Caicedo. He's using his agent like a shield. But, if Caicedo's like, God damn it, we got to finish this deal. I want to play soccer, right? That would be very natural for him to say. If we're sick of it, just imagine being Caicedo, right? And, the agent gets like Liverpool interested. And he's like, dude, you're not going to believe what I did. I told Liverpool, yes, you would be interested. So they'll now bid. Brighton will have to set a deadline to close the deal, and then Chelsea will have to get their shit straight and we'll finish this deal right away. And Chelsea did not, or could not, or whatever, and do it at the time. So if I'm an agent, that looks like you pulled a fast one to get, by bringing Liverpool into the equation, you sped everything up. And you did. This was, if we were not in it, this would have probably kept on dragging more with not as much focus on it. But suddenly, by bringing us into the equation and getting that bit in there, you kind of like sped everything up. Brighton suddenly set a deadline and they wanted to enforce it and stuff like that. So I feel like, that was like an agent's doing. And I mean, like I said, it could be in it too. Like you'd be like, yeah, that sounds good, man. Whatever you need to do to get this thing done fast. I just want to go back to playing soccer. I don't want to chill in London over here. I don't agree with this. I just says probably I don't think this has anything to do with ownership. Like we can't move the club to London, and if the dude wants to stay in London and play one of the clubs, there was nothing that the ownership could have done with this. Could we have moved faster with Lavia? Maybe, but here's the thing, Mateusz, and that's what I was going to ask you about Lavia. We clearly said, well, that's way too high. Like, we don't want to pay that much for Lavia. If we're going to do that, we'd rather go get Caicedo for like 100, whatever. It wasn't a money issue. It wasn't how much money. It was more about evaluation. Does it look bad now, or is it even right that we go back to Lavia and say, okay, yeah, well, you weren't worth 50, but 55, why not?
It's tough. It's messy because in a way you can signal to the player that, look, you were our first choice until a better first choice came around. So you really were kind of our second choice all along. Hey, do you want to come back now? You were our choice all along, kind of deal. Like that might sting for the player a little bit. I think ultimately, like he wants to leave Southampton. So whether he does go to Liverpool or Chelsea, evidently, it's going to happen. And I just think there's a little bit of a sour taste in his mouth potentially of being sort of the sloppy seconds in a way. But either way, whether he goes to Liverpool or Chelsea, he is the sloppy second because he'll either be going behind Caicedo or he'll be going here where he really wasn't who we targeted that would fill that hole for the next, hopefully, 5-6 years or whatever. The problem is, if you're willing to now spend 60 on him, then it was just a waste of the last 3 weeks.
Yes.
Why not get him in and bet him in? And you could have, who knows, maybe, Southampton were all along, they wanted 60 million. That's fine. Then fucking pay it when they wanted it instead of trying to do all this and then potentially losing out on both of them. And I don't know. I personally don't feel like spending 60 million on Lavia is a good idea given the comparison, at least of youth and inexperience to Bajcetic. I feel like where they're both at, if we were to get 60 million for Bajcetic, I think we would feel like we just, highway robbery in a way if someone paid us 60. And so to have both of them in a similar situation in their careers, I don't know if it's the best idea. But there aren't many DMs literally physically available to get. So you have to do something in a way.
And that's why it's in the prices are up, man. I'm not agreeing with Saidu at all this morning. He says Lavia for 50, 60 million this summer. Next year he may double. He's not going to double his value playing in championship unless he's going somewhere else. I don't think he's going to double his value. And I think one reason, Sergi says go get Polina from Fulham.
Spend 90 million for him? No. I mean, that's what they want for him. Wasn't it like 80 to 90?
Yeah, they wanted 80, I think is the last I heard. When I can't remember who said they were interested in him. Was that City? I can't remember. If it was City, they would have bought him by now for 80, 90, whatever they asked. So it was probably not City. Somebody inquired about him. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Spurs. It was one of the big boys that inquired about him, and they came back with like the 80. I guess that's the thing. Going back to Lavia, I don't think he increases that value, and I don't think these prices are high when you're going around and everybody in the world knows you're looking for a defensive midfielder stats. So that kind of like changes things. So let's say Anand's wet dreams come true, and like let's say Thiago or somebody who's already started practices comes back and slots into that sixth role against Bournemouth. You think there's a chance if we show that we actually have alternatives that the prices would go down, or the cat's out of the bag now? Everybody in the world knows, and the prices are going to keep going up. Oh, Saidu says he would increase his value with us. If he plays well, I know about double, but yes, he would increase his value. But then at that point, it's not like you're going to sell him for 80, 90 next summer anyway, because
no, because you still need a DM.
Yeah.
Like, why would you sell the one piece that you need? And obviously, like, I'm not going to try and sit here and say that I would want Lavia to fail. Any player that comes here, I want them to succeed. I'm just comparing it based off of what you're paying versus what you already have. And I know that, mentioning the comparison between the age and what they do on the pitch, like I get that, but what I'm saying is that they're both still sort of raw. And if you're going to have two raw DMs, it's tough to swallow the amount that you're paying for that when you already have sort of an unpolished project here. And we don't know how he's going to come back from injury. So I get that part of it, but I just don't like the idea of having essentially two kids that are trying to grow within the squad and having enough time to actually make an impact and not having so much pressure on them because we don't have a DM. Whoever gets slot in there is going to receive all the pressure from everyone, whether it's the fans, whether it's pundits, whatever the case. And they're both 19. Like it's a tough position to be in. So I think if Thiago is able to come back and slot in, I don't know if Bournemouth rips us apart, and we lose the match, let's say like 3-2 or something. Yeah, I think it gets worse. I think prices will go up because it's really, really high season for it. But I think if we should take care of Bournemouth with or without the DM, there might be still some holes. So I think Southampton at some point know they won't get more than X amount for Lavia, I think. So whatever gets it done, I think 60 might be the max. I don't know.
Yeah, you sold Saidu with that last explanation. Yeah, I agree. I think, but if you value that player that's high, the odd thing is, we clearly did not initially. So going back into it now and paying even more than what you initially did not value him at seems too desperate, but it is desperate at times. At the same time, let's say this. And that's the thing. Tough to go from Caicedo to any other option in the market. Steep drop in quality without the prices adjusting much for the drop in quality. Yeah, because you're not going from, well, we couldn't get that guy for like 110, but for 30, this is almost as good. No, like 60, this is kind of not even close, kind of a deal. But yeah, it's going to be like an odd thing. Let me ask you this, though. When you watched yesterday, do you see a chance where if people were more used to where they're playing, because it's not like McAllister played poorly. I think I felt we would have played even better if everybody played where they're supposed to. Because it's almost like, I don't know if I haven't played Football Manager in a while, but like when you play the guy out of position, there was like a certain quotient that came down the guy's performance. That's what it feels like. If the guy McAllister plays where he's at, he plays even better. If Gakpo plays where he should, he definitely plays a lot better. And I think everything is a lot more settled in. Then you do have Jota coming off the bench and everything like that. So do you think there were enough signs yesterday that says, hey, maybe in a couple of weeks, this will be it. And then Thiago and Basatic will be back?
I think, yeah, and I think we sort of talked about it on the pre-game show yesterday, is that if this is more of a, hey, experimental, let's see if these pieces can fit in these parts kind of system, and they do a good enough job where you can kind of rotate between Thiago and McAllister and Bajcetic and maybe even Curtis, like within those couple midfield spots, and it works enough, then I could see it being used until a DM comes in. Yeah.
Which would be God knows when, obviously.
I don't know. It's difficult because I think there were good signs yesterday. I think especially in the first 20, 25 minutes, I think it looked really good. It was after Mo's disallowed goal where I felt like everything just started to fall apart. And I don't really know what happened besides I think we were getting beat a ton on Robbo's side. I think Reece James and Sterling, when they want to play and they're healthy, that is a great duo to go up and down that right side. And I think Robbo and Gakpo had their hands full. And I think that's part of not having people in their natural position. Because I think if McAllister is on that left side, I think defensively that would have helped Robbo out a lot rather than having Gakpo back there. So, I don't know where else I was going to go with that besides, having a bit more naturalness in where these players are.
Yeah. No, I hear you there. I mean, that's the thing. I think, he's side is right. It's playing against Newcastle without a natural CDM, but I think you are already playing against Newcastle without a natural CDM, because if he walks into I think that will be one thing that I really, really, really was excited about the Caicedo thing, was the fact that he was already used to the Premier League and he was used to playing with McAllister. I think you were getting best of both worlds there. That's why this is like a bigger number. No, I know Paqueta was 90, but I'm almost positive when somebody inquired about Paulinho a month or so ago, they had him valued at, like, they asked for like 80 or something along those lines at the time. I was like, holy shit. And I can't remember if that was Newcastle. I know somebody, maybe it was because with somebody with money. The latest I hear, and that was like a month ago, is they offered 40. West Ham offered 45, and Fulham said, get the hell out of here at the time. But that was like a month ago. This is the article that says they're looking for like 80 for him. So, and then, Picker says he's also 28. No thanks. And that's like the issue. Yeah. Like, what are you gaining then? You spent another 50 and you got like a year or two younger. That's about it. But it's going to be a hell of an ordeal in the next few days over here. Sangare has a release close of 34. Again, it's the same thing. It feels like, are we not sold on him? That he has been around that release clause for 2 years now, and we never made a move. Media made a move. Liverpool never made a move. So same thing with the other guys that were mentioned in the beginning. I mean, their prices are still a lot lower. I think that's one thing perhaps we did poorly, is maybe these names came out a lot easier than before in terms of, and then these guys already had high release clauses like Kanye, Thuram, and stuff like that. I mean, otherwise, they're all in the price range that's under Lavia if you were sold on them. But I don't know. We're at the stage of the season. Maybe then it was a good option to be an understudy for Fabinho, and we were interested in him. Whereas now, we're not looking for the understudy. We're looking for like the main role. So we're not sold on them being the main role and to go spend like 35, 40 on them. But it's going to be interesting to see what we pull. But if I hear Tchouameni's name one more time, it's like the dude is like screaming from like the top of the mountain, saying like, I don't want to go to Liverpool. And we're like, we really admire you.
It's like the SpongeBob. I was like, how many times do I have to tell you this, old man? Like, I'm staying in Madrid. Fuck off. Leave me alone.
The Korea is also now obnoxious pricing.
Yeah, I think it was like 70 million.
That everybody knows. Because I mean, you could have probably got him in early in the window for probably like 30, 35, and now he's 50, 55. And I don't know if he's that good. I don't know if I'm sold on him being ready to walk in. So a couple of things. I'm sure the boys will go in detail over here, but anything that shocked you, impressed you, interested you over the weekend? Any score that you were like, holy shit, I didn't see that coming?
I didn't expect Newcastle to absolutely just stomp Villa, honestly. I thought, especially with Emery and seeing how well Villa played down the stretch last year, I expected them to come out. Again, obviously with Mings going down, probably for the season at this point, that's a tough blow.
Yeah.
So I can see what happened, what essentially came from that. But other than that, I think everything else was sort of expected. I like the way Tottenham plays under Ange. I think it's pretty fun. It's not fun to watch for Charleston on the field, but overall, I think they might be. Obviously they have to adapt without Kane, and that's the guy that's been there for pretty much a decade, and you're losing usually about half of your goal involvements over the last decade, really, when you factor in goals and assists and being part of so many chances, and you have to adapt from that. But I think they'll play enough exciting football where it'll be interesting to see where they really line up as far as with the rest of the teams in the league. But overall, I had nothing else that really stood out. I think everything else is par for the course.
Yeah, I don't know that Tottenham deal, how long that's going to go. How patient are Tottenham going to be with this new system? Because, man, I can see some games going really ugly.
Oh yeah,
You
that's
know what
what's
I mean?
fun
Like
though.
the
That's what's
way they
fun.
play, like just leave those two center backs back there. I don't think they have the center backs, at least right now, to be able to play that. I don't know if that young kid would turn out to be that, but it just feels like, man, a smart forward or a winger can have a party. As for an away team, like I almost feel like there'll be some games where Tottenham gets embarrassed at home. It definitely was entertaining to watch. So I'll give you that. I thought it was
Yeah,
extremely
we're
entertaining to
we're gonna
watch.
see a lot of 4-3s from Spurs games this year. I mean, that's just and from a fantasy aspect, like that's fun. You want to see goals, so that's what I'm here for. And when it comes to the rest of the league, I don't really care as long as the fantasy is in play.
Yeah, some interesting scores. And like this Wednesday, we start our like live panel show, which is going to start. It's going to be live over here, 8 o'clock Central, so that's 9 o'clock Eastern. And on our panel this week, we have a fan from Villa, fan from Fulham who beat Everton away, and a fan from Arsenal joining me as we talk about Premier League stuff in general and take a look at the scores on week one. One thing, a couple of things I want to ask. I mean, for example, the rule changes are the main thing. I mean, we talked about like rules that are not enforced. I've been talking about this for a couple of years. I was like, did that rule go away where you ask for a yellow, you automatically got a yellow, right? It's like the way you want it, you got it. It's kind of a thing. But it went away. Never heard of it. People kept doing it. And it's back, baby. Like it's like bringing like a fashion trend back. Do you think it's back for a week or two? Or is like how they make it like the point of emphasis and then
Yeah,
just going to go away, or you think this one is here to stay now?
I think if they're serious about the behavioral disciplinary actions this year and carding the managers and getting out of their touch boxes and actually cracking down on it, I feel like it's here to stay because it could really then hopefully change the behavioral problems that we see, the crowding, the whining, the all the annoyances. So I don't think it's an experiment this time. I think it's here to stay.
What is the point of not having more than one guy in the managerial thing? Can somebody explain this to me? Like, what was the problem?
That I don't know. I think maybe that's like a close cousin to crowding the ref and crowding the box. Like getting too many guys in there. I don't know. Like maybe the fourth official is a little scared when he looks over his shoulder and sees Pep Linders and Klopp both yelling their heads off.
Yeah, that's what I mean, he's yelling from 2 feet behind him. It's not like
Yeah.
it's not like he's staying all the way on the other stadium. I just did not understand that. And Klopp even joked about like aside from Newcastle, he was like, I don't understand what like nobody is going to be impacted because he was talking about like I like involved how like why is it wrong? So but Club was talking about the post matches during a set piece. I'm assuming it's Pep. I can't remember if he mentioned which manager, but they come out to yell instructions. The fourth official says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! One manager at a time." So Club says, "So then I can sit. He can be here. Yes." So the assistant manager can be there, if it's only one guy, it's like the 3-second rule in basketball. There's only one guy that, like, I don't understand. I literally don't understand the point or why it was made. Like, we're stopping the game now to kind of take a look at, like, he's in there, so he blows up or something if both of them go in there at the same time. I just didn't understand that, because you're not protecting the fourth official, I don't think. Like, I know what you're saying, but I don't know if you're protecting the fourth official. The card thing, I definitely do like, in terms of, it does get old. But here's the thing that I worry about is you have yet another rule that's going to be probably shown here, but not there. Or do you see some like an obnoxious red coming next week in the 50th minute to a forward who got yanked down?
Yeah, well, and I could also see, a guy on a yellow card. Let's say it's in the 54th, 55th minute. He gets tackled pretty badly and just naturally gets up, or like naturally on the ground, like complaining, saying like, "Hey, why not card him for that?" And then they get a second yellow for asking for that, and he's off the field. Like, I think that kind of situation, and it'd be tough to make that. I think, okay, what I'm trying to say. It's sort of like how we talk about fouls in the box, right? If a foul is a foul, whether it's in the penalty box or if it's outside of the penalty box, it's a foul. What I worry is that we're going to get into a situation where you're going to have someone on a yellow who gets taken down and is complaining for a yellow and doesn't get that second yellow because they're already on a yellow, and the ref would be like, all right, well, I don't know if I can send him off for this specifically, but by the letter of the law, you would have to. And so that's what I'm worried about. And kind of to your point, is that if there is no consistency, then there is no point to have the rule.
And I don't think it's a deal where it's not going to have consistency. So I got to go back and read the rule in detail, but is it just motioning or is it asking?
Could you say it's the same thing?
No, you could not.
If I do this,
you're like trying to bring the stadium in, because if you're like, dude, how is that not a card on the ground? Is different than saying, because you're telling the entire stadium we should be asking for a card all together now, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So you're putting the ref in a situation that's basically gets the crowd against the ref or whatever. I'm assuming that's kind of like the nature of the rule. But is it just asking for a card regardless? Can you politely ask? Shouldn't the gentleman in wearing number 7 should be getting like some kind of?
Excuse me, Mr. Taylor. Could you look back on that and give this young man a yellow card for that, please?
As opposed to just saying like, "Hey, where's the cards?" is what most players do. Because really, when a player does that, it kind of like, especially for the home team, it brings the crowd who's already asking for a card anyway.
Yeah, I mean, because they're already asking for it. Perhaps it is more of the motioning of it than actually talking. Because I think ultimately, what the refs would like to see, I think, is having just a conversation. If they're saying like, "Hey, why didn't you card this guy?" rather than him going like this and telling him to card him. If maybe you're more civil about it, and then I think it goes back to having like making sure that the refs don't get crowded so they can actually communicate what they potentially saw and why they chose the decision that they did, to give some sort of understanding to the players of why that call was made. So I think maybe if he just says it, it's not going to be carded because it just allows for that conversation, as opposed to this. Actually, everyone can see that of them doing that, but no one can really see what is being said.
Because it would be harsh if you're like, trying to communicate and get clarification from the ref in terms of, I mean, that was his third foul. Shouldn't he, how come that wasn't a yellow? You're kind of getting clarification, I would guess, as opposed to saying, "Hey, I got to go back and read the letter of the law, if you will, to see if that's going to be." But I like you saying that's my biggest concern. Is there going to be consistency, or which ref is going to start? I don't even know if it's going to be consistent like this week 1. When we talk about this in like 2 months or so, are we going to be like, "Oh yeah, that was a thing when we first started and now it's gone"? And if that's the case, which ref is going to abandon it on week 3, which ref is going to abandon it on week 5? I guess that's my biggest concern. Otherwise, as a rule, I'm all for it, whatever. Like, don't ask for it. If it's there, it's there. Insider says that New York will give many referees room to frustrate many players. I mean, just keep playing your game. I mean, here's the thing: it's not like he gets it when you ask for it. So if you're asking for it, if you not being able to ask for it is frustrating you, then that's on you, is what I would say. I mean, it's not, the result is not really changing. Usually, especially for the home team, it's the stadium that kind of makes the foul a lot, and that's like kind of like the home team advantage. We should just forget buying any more players and invest in refs like Manchester clubs like Chelsea did yesterday. So let's talk about that real quick. Yesterday's call. Um, I mean, the offside is offside, right? And I think both of them were. Uh, I really thought, like I say, we did hold. Held off on the snacks when the goal happens, because I was like, let's wait on this one. Mind you, I even waited on the first one because I didn't know if Diaz was coming because he looked so far ahead when he got
He
the
did.
ball, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So offside is offside. It is what it is. If anything, they were focusing on the guy right next to Mo. If anything, I was thinking it was the foot of the guy that was up top on the screen, and it wasn't. And that would have really been a game changer. Honestly, if that becomes 2-0, I think we win that game like 4-1,
Easily.
5-2, something
Yep.
obnoxious like that. But the penalty situation, I guess, is going to be the biggest issue. Anthony Taylor is Anthony Taylor, but the penalty issue. Do you think that's a penalty? Let me change you this, okay? Because this is kind of like how I'm looking at. We had a similar thing with Fenerbahce yesterday. A couple of ridiculous ordeals that we were talking with my brother. If it happens to Konate, do you think it would be fair to get a penalty called against us? Or would you be like, I mean, it's here, it's on his body.
I think we would be upset if it was called, but I think based on what has been called a handball and what hasn't been called a handball, that was a handball, in my opinion. I think it should have been called. Because when you compare that to situations, like I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was either Dyer or Longley, where their back was literally turned to the ball and they had just jumped and their arm had extended and they weren't even facing the ball and it bounced off their arm and it was called a PK. If that sort of thing is called a penalty, then having your hand out like this has to be a penalty.
But
I don't care.
It's not out. Like it was literally in his body.
Was it in his body or was it just sort of just a little...
I feel like if it doesn't hit him, first of all, if that's the defender, he's not jumping like that, right? Because you like now these guys are kind of learned to, if that ball is coming. So I felt if it was going to be a penalty, it was because you saw the ball coming the entire way. Like, so you had a lot of time to adjust. It's not like, it got kicked into him.
Well, it did deflect off Diaz.
But how close was Diaz? I mean, he has time to kind of take that and go with his chest.
Right. He was close enough. I think some of the arguments people are making are, did he have time to react? And I don't know if that's necessarily, that's not the law, right? It doesn't say in the handball rule, if a player has time to react, then it is X or Y. It's just whatever happens. And I think, here's my thing. I think if it was called on the field, I don't think it would have been overturned. So I think whatever decision was made right there at the moment was the decision that was going to happen. And so unfortunately the decision at the time was no handball, so it wasn't given. But if it was flipped, I think it would have stayed as a penalty. That one, it's a tough one. I think is, like you said, just close enough to the body where you could probably get away with saying that his hands weren't impeding. Like, as if his hand wasn't there, it would hit most likely his chest or like his armpit.
It was an unnatural position because who jumps like
that? Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, no one's gonna do this. So that's why I didn't say unnatural. I just said that his hands were just a little weird. I don't know.
He was like jumping like a bunny there. I don't understand what the point of that was, but yeah, it was. I don't know. I just feel like while it's a handball, definitely, I feel like if it was called on Konate, we would be like, that's harsh. Yeah, I know it's a handball, but it's harsh. What is he supposed to do? Is probably what I would say if it was called on us. But then you would be like, the law is the law, it's a stupid law, and then you would kind of like live with it. I just felt like because it was on his body, if anything, you said, hey, maybe he can adjust it, but like I don't know. That's when it becomes such a gray area, and I think it goes back to what you're saying though. If you're basing it off of other decisions that are made as opposed to just looking at the situation because they call some weird things that they probably should not.
Yeah. And I think this one specifically, not, I mean, and there are many that I would like to hear over the weekend, but this is one of those moments where listening to the conversation between VAR and the ref, I think will clear up a lot of things. And, you know, whether it was called or not, as long as we hear why and we can understand why they made the decision that they did, I think we can just look at it and go, okay, great, let's move on kind of deal. Unless the decision just makes absolutely no sense. And I think that's where the transparency needs to happen, is we need to know exactly why the decision was made and what they saw to determine it in their eyes versus what we saw.
Do you think they don't allow that right now because they don't want to face further scrutiny, because the inconsistencies would come out a lot more? Because you're going to play, you know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to play a recording from the West Ham game where the guy in VAR is saying something completely opposite of the sound clip we play from the Brentford game, for example. And it's going to be total, it's going to really bring out the contradictions throughout.
There has to be accountability and transparency at some point. So, you know, I'd say just bring it out. I don't know.
I'm all for it, but do you think that's why they're not doing it? I mean,
yeah, probably. And there's, you know, I think are they still doing the show every week where they're gonna show? They were doing a show last year where they would do a few VAR decisions and play exactly why, or the sound of everything.
Those are like, they're like, let's look at this example.
Well, and yeah, and they're gonna look at the ones that aren't as controversial. So yeah, they're definitely doing it to protect themselves more than anything.
Yeah, I feel like those are like more like infomercials of VAR or something like that. See, this is how VAR really helps the world. And then like next week, we'll take a look at this kind of a thing and move on. I really want to like hear that. And I think once we hear that, it will really underline the inconsistencies, which is probably why they're not, like I say, showing them and letting us hear what's being talked about. So by the time you are on, which is what we play next Monday? No, next Saturday, right?
Saturday.
Yeah. Do you think, are we talking a new signing, or are we still talking about how much does this guy go for? How much does that guy go for? We got what, 2 weeks here, right?
2 weeks,
don't we?
Oh, for the transfer window. I thought you meant
for the window.
Until the game. I was like, there's no break this week. Yeah, I think if there's no signing by Saturday, I think a lot of fans will just riot. So I think there has to be something. I think there will be something. I don't know if it's going to be Lavia, but I think there will be someone.
Yeah, it's going to be. Maybe. I agree. I think something has to happen. They got to say at this point. But I just have a bad feeling that it would be settling. And you think Klopp would rather settle, or would say, you know what? If I don't get my guy, fuck it. We'll go with what we got.
Yeah, that's Klopp has done that before, right? I mean, he wants to play with guys that want to be there, and he wants to use who he has. And so if he doesn't get anyone, he's going to say, great, I got to just work with what I've got. And maybe by Saturday we'll have 2 new guys. I think one of them's named Tiago, and the other one is like Stefan Beketic. You know, we haven't really figured out what his name is pronounced like yet. But I think those 2 new guys, I think they could do a good shift.
Yeah, it'll be like a new signing. Yeah. Saidu says likes of Arthur, and that's what I'm afraid of. I just don't want that. Don't bring a guy just to bring a guy who's never going to come in anyway. I'd rather not bring in anybody, and then, you know, like just roll with what we got and say, hey, yeah, we're gonna put McAllister there. Thiago is going to be back, and then I guess hang on till January and see if you can snatch somebody who's on the last year of their contract, or team that's out of the running or something like that. But like an NBA deadline trade or something like that in January.
The Andre guy from was it from Fluminense or
somewhere
in Brazil? Yeah.
I mean, at least, you know, like I feel like I'd rather do that. I just don't want to do a last week deal where the guy's never going to show up. It's just to build up numbers. That's just kind of like a waste of, and I think it makes us look worse when we do that. I'd rather not do a move and say, hey, you know what? The guys we want are not available, and we're not overpaying for a guy just for overpaying for a guy. And then I guess we can kind of go back and say, why the hell do we sell all these guys? I think for Fab, that was a good deal regardless. But I feel like we could have played hardball with Henderson and made him stay. And then he would be the 6 right now. And honestly, yesterday, if Henderson plays 6, let me ask you that. We said it with Fab, but even if Henderson plays 6, McAllister plays where he's supposed to, Gakpo plays up top, do we win that game?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. That was my predicted lineup. Was it like maybe 2 months ago when you asked, or a month and a half? And I said McAllister, Henderson, and Szoboszlai was the midfield I was going to expect going into the season. So I don't know. It's tough. It sucks because we really feel like it could have gone a different way if we just kept one of those guys. But like you said, we're not getting any more. We're not getting more than 40 for Fabinho from anyone else ever again. So yes, money wise, it made sense, and I get it.
Getting a new Curie before next Wednesday. We offered 25, target 149. Sideman, you wish you had Henderson right now. You wish we had Henderson. I know I wish we had Henderson right now because he would have played yesterday and we would have been a lot more effective. I would recommend the Nespresso, but that goes for even more. That's like watching Tchouaméni.
The Nespresso's at Real Madrid. That's where it's at. We're not getting the Nespresso. We're not getting anywhere near the Nespresso anytime soon.
Oh man, this saga, it's been like a rough. It was going so smooth, and then these last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think ever since camp, like we went into camp, we were like, it's all good. If we can maybe one more midfielder for depth, one more center back. That's where we were at like a month ago, and today we're like, who's gonna play CDM and stuff? Yeah, it's been like a crazy off season. I blame the Saudis and I blame Stevie more than anybody else, but that's a different story. But I will be back tonight with the boys, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, and then they're also doing the Premier League show later after that, as well as a recording, so that should be out later this week. Like I say, the panel show is on Wednesday night, but I will be also back Wednesday morning with the morning coffee show. The Polish Prince, thanks a lot as always, bud. We'll see you guys tonight where we talk about the game and get the takes of it. By then, maybe we'll have like 2 signings or something. Probably not. But we'll see what happens. Have a great week, everybody.